So in this lesson we cover mesh light. Using mesh light you can convert any object to a light source. Even though you have different light shapes like disc, sphere and plane, sometimes you might need something more complex. For example, in this scene I want to turn on this neon sign and make these letters emit light. We do have a dome light that provides a basic environment lighting with an HDRI, like we did towards the end of the previous lesson. Let's run a quick IPR session to see what we have. Remember, we are in an ACES color managed scene, so provide the proper OCIO config file in the VFV. Now let's turn this neon sign into a light source. I'm going to add a V-Ray light from the create panel and change the type to mesh and click in the perspective view to add the light. You can add this teapot light icon in the V-Ray toolbar to add a mesh light directly as well. The first thing we need to do is to define the object that we want it to be a light source. So go to the modify panel of the light, come down to this mesh light section, click on this pick mesh button and then select the neon sign or any geometry that you want to be the light source. And that's all there is to it really. Now we can change the unit to watts and start increasing the multiplier until we get something we probably like. Maybe around 30 would result in a nice balanced light. You can define any color for the mesh light using the color picker here as we learned in the previous lesson. So let's try a few colors. Maybe go for a vibrant pink with the RGB values of 253, 32, and 224. Okay, looks nice. And maybe something blue with the RGB values of 25, 85, and 255. Okay, pretty fun. And let's go for an orange with the RGB values of 255, 28, and 3. Let's wait for a minute to see what we get. Okay, that looks good. If you take a look at the mesh light, it has a few specific and very self-explanatory options. You can flip the normals of the geometry that is turned into a light source. If you click on this button here, you can pick a new object to be your light source instead of the one that you already selected. And if this replace mesh with light option is enabled when you pick a geometry to be your mesh light, that geometry will be replaced completely with the mesh light and no longer exists in your scene. To bring that geometry back after turning it into a mesh light, you can use this extract mesh as node option. Now, instead of using mesh light, you can take another approach, and that is to assign a V-Ray light material to the geometries that you want them to be light sources. In this case, let's go ahead and turn off the mesh light. By the way, you can use this on checkbox to turn a light on and off. Now, if I go to the Scene Explorer, we can unhide this backup neon sign geometry and select it. Now open up the material editor using M hotkey. Right click and add a V-Ray light material from V-Ray materials to the active view. And simply right click on the material and assign it to the selection. And let's increase the light multiplier in the V-Ray light material to 100. Now you can see we are basically have our neon sign back on again. Let's use an orange color with the RGB values of 255, 55, and 3 as our V-Ray light material color. And there you have it. We'll talk about V-Ray light material in detail later on in the material section of the course. I just wanted to make you aware of the alternative to the mesh light, which can be a bit easier to control and handle. Ultimately, it depends on your preference. For now, let's close the material editor. Hide the neon backup geometry, turn on the mesh light again, and we can hide the Scene Explorer as well. When you have a light source directly visible in your camera view, it would be nice to be able to add some bloom and glare for a more realistic look and to fight off some of the inevitable anti-aliasing issues that rise from the contrast between the light source pixels and the regular pixels. So let's open up the layer panel in the VFB, select the lens effects layer, and enable bloom and glare effect in the properties. If I set the size to 30 and intensity maybe to around 5, now you can clearly see some of that nice halo effect around the light source. Obviously, it's a bit too much, and one of the first lessons that you need to learn to get more realistic images is to always be subtle with what you do. So let's decrease the intensity to around 3. That looks a bit better. Obviously, it depends on the scene and what you want to achieve, but probably 3 would be enough for now. Now, we will learn everything about lens effects later on in the course, but this is enough for now. Now you can go for the final render. Great, so in this video, we learned about V-Ray mesh light. See you in the next one.